Hi guys, Squirrel here. Kerbal Space Program. Does anybody remember this on my channel? It's been a while. It's been a good while. Like, you're probably talking at least 18 months since I've done any content for Kerbal. I have been streaming Kerbal a bit recently, and I've got back into it. I just love this game. It is a bit complicated in that you've got to learn some orbital mechanics and stuff, but I can take you through that. I can simplify it down and take you through that. And underneath the hood, this game is extremely enjoyable. Sandboxy, space adventure-y, and it's got a career mode. This is now version 1.02. This game finally went into release just a few weeks ago, which was a momentous day because I was one of the early backers for this game and played it back in the day when it was version 0.1 and 0.2. But I'm going to start a brand new career profile, and I'm going to make a series of videos just going through the career mode. The main thing about the career mode is it has a tech tree that you have to work through, and that's what I'm going to do. It's going to take a while. There'll be quite a few videos before we get through this tech tree, but along the way, bit by bit, hopefully it'll be enjoyable for you and you'll learn some stuff. So, as you can see, 3 options. Sandbox lets you just do what you like. Science mode, you have to gather scientific data, research new technologies, but funds and reputation are disabled and contracts aren't available. That's what they call classic career mode. So this is the actual career mode now. I'm going to leave it on difficulty normal. You can basically make this pretty difficult if you up the difficulty. So missing crews respawn like here. So if you lose a career person, if you lose a crew guy, like you smash him into a planet or something, if you're on moderate difficulty, he won't respawn. No entry purchase required on research. That's the main difference. Starting funds only 15 grand. Resource abundance 80%. I'm toying with the idea of going moderate actually. Hard I'm not going to do because you can't even revert flights. Hard in Kerbal is pretty hard. Even this with 15 grand is not easy. No entry purchase required on research. Let's go moderate. I was going to go normal. Let's go moderate. Start off with less money. We can get that back fairly quickly. Missing crew respawn doesn't happen. So we need to take care of our crew, which I think we should do anyway. So let's do that. Okay, so let's call this one YouTube Squirrel, and we'll pick our flag. I've got my own flag here. Basically, you can make your own flags in this. They're just like little PNGs that you drop into the folder, the game data flags folder. And when you put a flag down, it actually has your logo on it, which is quite cool. So let's do this. Let's start a brand new series of videos on Kerbal Space Program in a moderate career mode. Okay, this is our base, and it's pretty sparse. I mean, it really is compared to what you can get this to. This is pretty basic. That runway though is just basically a gravel track. It says here, welcome to the Space Center. Nice to meet you. I'm Gene Kerman, flight director, and your guide for this quick introduction. This is the Space Center. From here, you can manage all aspects of the space program. Feel free to have a look around. Hold the right mouse button to move the camera, or use the arrow key. So basically, you look around like that. Right-click over the Space Center facilities to view more about them, and left-click when you're ready to head inside. If you need more information, check out the training section of the main menu. Okay, got that. So, zoom in and out like this. What you've got, essentially, alright, over here is your mission control. This is where you get contracts and stuff. And then here you've got 2 assembly buildings. This one is the one when you want to build aircraft or space planes. Anything that takes off on a runway, you build it here. It's a horizontal takeoff type thing. So generally you go down the runway, plop into the sea, or hopefully take off. Over here you've got the vehicle assembly building. This is where you build space rockets and stuff. Anything that flies upwards, generally you build in this, and then you launch it here from the launch pad. Now all of these are on low spec at the moment, and you have to upgrade them. So if you right click on this, for example, this is the launch pad. You can see that there are limits on what it can launch, the vehicle size and weight, and if you upgrade it, if you hover over that, it tells you for 112,000 you can launch bigger, higher vehicles. It's the same for all the buildings. This is the observatory. From here you can monitor planetary bodies, space things you've got in orbit around the various planets. Here. This is the Research and Development Center. We're going to have a look at this in a minute. This is where you basically look at your tech tree. This is what allows you to unlock components to build bigger, more complicated things. Down here you've got the astronaut complex. Currently we've got a capacity of 5 Kerbals. Kerbals are the little green men. They're the guys that sit in your craft basically, unless it's an unmanned craft. Kerbals can only disembark on Kerbin. Now that's a big limit. What that means is that when you launch them in a craft somewhere, they can only get out on this planet at the moment. So if we was to fly to the moon, for example, they could land on the moon, but can't get out the craft and walk around. And it's very valuable to be able to do that because you can get a lot of science and stuff by doing it. This is the administrative building here. This is where you set your strategies. We're not going to worry about that one just yet. So what we need to do is we need to look at... up here, right? Up here, let's do this. This is your money, 15,000 credits or whatever they're called. This is your reputation. As you can see, we're kind of neutral at the moment. You gain and lose reputation by, you know, completing contracts, doing cool things, science. You lose it by basically killing Kerbals or failing contracts, that kind of thing. And this is your science. This is your currency that you use to upgrade your tech tree. If we have a quick look at the tech tree, you'll see where we're at here. It's quite a big tech tree actually. It flows left to right. We've got this unlocked at the moment, the start. And if you click on the start, it basically says these are the available parts. Now, very, very basic stuff in here. You've got your command pod, which is where your Kerbal will sit. You've got a solid fuel booster. You've got the basic fin. Forget that engineering one for a second. The flight unit, some mystery goo, which you can use to test in various places and unlock some more science. A girder segment and a parachute. In other words, absolute minimalistic stuff. And that's the point. We need to get more science. We need to unlock some stuff here. As you can see, basic rocketry is going to be 5 science to unlock. And basic rocketry will give us a liquid fuel engine and a solid fuel booster, a bigger one, and a fuel tank. So this is really good stuff to get, but we'll need to have 5 science to unlock it. And then the engineering unit. The engineering unit gives us another more advanced cockpit. It gives us a science unit, which is extremely valuable for getting more science. It gives us a communitron, which is like an aerial that we can use to transmit science back to the planet, so that we don't need to bring it back. Talk more about that later. And a stack decoupler, which I can show you how that works later as well. So what we should do is click on the mission control and have a look if there's any contracts that we could do to give us some more stuff. Essentially it's broken down into available contracts, any active contracts, and then the archive. So you can see we've got 3 contracts given to us for free. At the top, available contracts 0, maximum 2. So we can't actually take any of these yet because we can take 2 of these at the moment because it's given us these for free. And you can see set an altitude record of 3,500 meters. If we was to complete that contract, then we'll get 2,600 currency. Achieve an altitude of 3,500 meters incomplete. So we get some vessel 3,500 meters. Similar thing with this one. This is a distance record of 5,000 meters. Again, if we take off on a rocket and we go far enough, we should be able to get both quite quickly. And then a speed record of 150 meters per second. We should be able to knock these 3 on the head fairly quickly. But let's see if we can couple it up with something else. And we can. Look, launch our first vessel. So we should be able to do this fairly quickly. If we launch a vessel, we might pick that up along with some of these. What happens is when you take this contract, it gives you an advance of 1,800 credits there. If we fail the contract, in other words, if we cancel it, we'll lose 1,900. But if we complete it, we get a bonus of 4,700. We get 1 science point and we get 1 reputation point. Okay, which will move that bar up there, essentially. So we'll take that one. Accept that contract. You see it expires in 5 days. We've got a couple of others here which we we can't complete that one yet. We don't have the rocketry to escape the atmosphere. But this one, guys, gather scientific data from Kerbin. Now this says, give us a quick crew report before launching. It's fine if you have any lights on the control panel are flashing, just give it a swift kick. Prestige significant. Recover or transmit any science experiment data from Kerbin to achieve the goal. That's eminently doable. Because we're going to do exactly that. We're going to get scientific data by using that mystery goo. That's going to give us some science data. So let us take that one. Now we've got maxed out on contracts here. Let's exit that. And then we'll go and build our first sort of vehicle and do a test launch over here. Welcome to the Vehicle Assembly Building. Hello, I'm Werner von Kerman, Chief Rocketry Engineer. Very smart guy, look, he's got glasses and everything. This is the Vehicle Assembly Building. Here is where we build spacecraft and later roll them out to the launch pad for flight. Pretty impressive. There's a launch pad very far away. On your left, you'll find components to construct your spacecraft. Select a starting part, then attach others to build a ship. You can then have a look around with the right mouse button or right arrow key. That's it, really. Oh, it's not as if it was rocket science. Yeah. Anyway, if you need to know more in-depth explanation on how to build, have a look at the training section in the main menu. Got it. We don't need to worry about that because I'm going to be the trainer today. So they're kind of broken down on the left here to pods, fuel tanks, engines, command and control, structural, aerodynamic, utility and science. Yeah. And we have, at the moment, 37,000 credits because we've got some advanced money. We need a command pod, basically. We can't really do without that. So we'll take that. That's the command pod. And we now hold the right mouse button. We can kind of spin around and have a look around here. Oh, very nice. Mouse wheel will zoom, will go up and down, hold shift and it'll zoom in and out. Okay. That's pretty much how it works. Don't worry about this. This is a mod I'm using. Ignore the numbers and stuff that you'll see here. I'll explain all of that later when we start getting into a little bit of the mathematics behind this stuff. For now, we're just going to keep it simple. We've got our command pod, and if we click on up here, the crew, you can see that we have these 4 guys, okay, available crew, and one of them is currently in the command pod. This is Jebediah Kerman. He's a pilot. Valentina's also a pilot. Now that becomes important later. One's a scientist, one's an engineer. They are specialised in different things, and obviously we're going to take Jeb out. Jeb's fairly indestructible, and that's a good thing. What we need to do is we're going to need a parachute up here, because what's essentially going to happen is our rocket is going to fire up, and then obviously it'll run out of fuel, and then it'll come back down to the ground, and that's bad. So he'll explode if we don't put a parachute on there. So if we go to utility, you can see we've cannily got a Mark 16 parachute. So we click that, and you see those little green dots there, they're sort of locking points. There should be one underneath, see? So you can actually attach things there, but not this piece, because this piece attaches from the bottom only. So we'll click that on there like that. You may or may not have seen down here that was some kind of staging stuff has appeared. This is important, but we'll go through that in a minute. What we basically need now is an engine and some fuel. So we click on fuel tanks. We don't have any. We don't have any fuel. We haven't unlocked the liquid fuel yet. So your traditional rocket is not yet possible. The only thing we actually have unlocked is a solid fuel booster called the Flea. This is all we have. We're starting pretty basic. Now, we're going to click that under there like that. The thing is about a solid fuel booster is the difference, really, the main difference between a solid fuel and liquid fuel is with a solid fuel, it's a bit more like a rocket firework in that you light the touch paper and that's it. Once it's going, it's going. There's no way to control it. There's no way to turn it off. It just burns until it's all gone. So when you say go on this thing, it's gonna start and you're going until it runs out of fuel. Liquid fuel is different. Liquid, you can reduce the fuel and oxidize a mix, and you can reduce the power and so on. With a solid, you can't do anything. Command and control, structural. Well, we don't need to worry about structural just yet. I mean, you know, we could build some artificial legs. We could, but there's not much point. Aerodynamics. You know, we could put some fins on there. I mean, I can show you how. If you click on this, right, and then there's a couple of things that you need to know about attaching components, alright? And they're down here, these two. The angle snap and the symmetry. Now the angle snap, if you turn angle snap off by clicking it, you see how it sort of just smoothly goes around like that? And if you turn angle snap on, it snaps it into sort of angles, which is nicer for getting things lined up with each other. So we'll leave angle snap turned on. The only other thing is the symmetry. Now symmetry in space is extremely important. If you don't have symmetry, then all kinds of nasty things can happen. And I'll explain that later, but let's just start off by putting 4 fins on here. So if we click that once, that will give us 2, you see? And if we click it again, 3, click it again, 4. That will allow us to place down 4 fins very, very easily. Now fins, really all they do is they add to the stability. These particular fins don't do much apart from sit there, and as you take off, they'll kind of help to keep it in a straight line. That's all they're going to do. Later you can get fins which have control surfaces on them, and as your rocket is going up, you'll be able to use them to change the course of your rocket. But initially, we're just going to put those 2 on there like that. There you go. It's about as simple as it comes, really. The only thing to do now is to go down to our science. And on our science, we've got this, the mystery goo. Now, the mystery goo, if we click on it, this is, consider it like it's a pod that has some scientific stuff in it. And what you can do is you can observe the mystery goo, yeah? You can observe it. When you observe it on Kerbin, when you observe it up in the atmosphere, when you observe it in different parts of Kerbin, which has different biomes, or when in space or on the planet of maybe on the moon or something, it will be different. And therefore, you can observe, you can get science by observing the mystery goo. So I'm going to put 2 on there, 1 on either side. The plan is that I'm going to have a look at the mystery goo when I'm on the launch pad, and then when we get up into the atmosphere a little bit, we won't go very high, but when we get up there, I'm going to observe it in the atmosphere as well. Try and get a bit of extra science. That's the plan. Okay, that's all we can do. That's the last thing to do is to save your craft, which you can click up here, and we'll just call it. What should we call it? Squirrel SQRL. We'll call it, actually, you know what, because we're called, if you look on the logo on the side, Kerbal Space Industries, we'll call it SSI 1. There you go. I'll save that. So you click save, it saves it, that's it. You can load back in here, and then you click the green button to go to the launch pad. But first, and this is really important, you see down here, the staging. Now, the staging is quite simple once it's explained to you, but it's crucial to a successful launch. At the moment we have 1 stage. Each stage is activated by pressing the spacebar during launch. As you're flying your craft, you press the spacebar and it moves to the next stage. Currently we have a problem, because if we hit a spacebar right now, what's going to happen is the rocket will fire and the parachute will deploy, and that's not a good thing. We need to split that. So if we click the plus key, that will give us stage 1, which fires before stage 0. So stage 0 is the last stage. If we click on the rocket, we can drag it into stage 1. Now what we've got is we've got a 2-stage launch. We've got stage 1, fire the rocket. It will then run out of fuel. The rocket will go up, and then it will stop, and gravity will start to bring it back down. As it starts to come back down again, we press the space, and that will launch the parachute. That's it. It's as simple as that. Let's give it a go. There we are. We're on the launch pad. That's the vehicle assembly building that we just came out of. Nothing much to look at here, except we can get some free signs. How do we get some free signs? Well, one of the things we can do is we can basically EVA JEB. EVA means extra vehicular activity and intra-vehicular activity. It's a very long-winded way of saying get out the vehicle or be in the vehicle, and this is the vehicle, yeah? One thing we can do right now is observe some mystery goo, but let's just go up here to the contracts list, and you can see our contracts: achieve launch our first vessel. Well, we can do that in a second. Let's collapse that. Set an altitude record of 3,500 meters. We may or may not set that. Set distance record. We may or may not do that. Set speed record. We may or may not do that. This one. Gather scientific data from Kerbin. Okay. Gather scientific data from Kerbin. What we're going to do is we're going to right click on the mystery goo and we're going to observe it. So the pod opens. You observe the mystery goo. The goo doesn't seem to be doing much right now. That's fine, but look at this. Recovery 2.7 science. Transmit 0.8. What that means is, let's say we're on the surface of the moon right now and we decided we're not going to make it back with this thing. We're going to have to transmit that data. If we have a little radio antenna on top, we can transmit it back, but we'll only get that much science, 0.8. If we can get this pod back to the space center, we'll recover it and get 2.7. So we're not going to transmit it because we'll only get 30% of the value. What we're going to do is keep the data. So that will store the data, right? So when we recover the craft later, we'll get all of that science for it. Now, let's right click on this and we can do a crew report from here, which will be worth a bit of science. So we'll click on that. You record the crew's assessment of the situation. 1.4 science, transmitted 1.4 science. So we'll keep that data. There we go. So we've got a bit more science. Now what we'll do is EVA. So we click on EVA. What happens is Jeb's got out. Now he's not got his helmet on because he's back on Kerbin, so he doesn't need it. He can breathe and stuff. But what Jeb can do when he's EVA'd is he can get an EVA report. Like that. This is the most precarious situation, says Jeb. But look at that. 5 science he gets. So we'll keep that data. So that's even more data we're just accumulating right now. And then if you right click on this, because he's outside the craft, if we right click on this, we can collect the data from that. Now that's not particularly useful right now, but if we was detaching this bit and not bringing it back with us, we could take the data from it. Jeb will basically keep it on himself, or we can store it back in the craft, and that's extremely useful. Same thing about this. This is a weird thing, is we can take the data that we just got like that. We can take the data. It's now in Jeb. It's in Jeb's head, if you like, or on bits of notepads, and then we can store the experiments back inside the craft. See? So what we did there was basically took the data off the craft and put it back in, but in the hard drive in a different place. All right. So I'm going to press B, and we're going to board him again. There he goes. So he's back in the craft now. Now we're ready to launch. We've just done some science on the ground. Gain scientific data from Kerbin. We've still not done that yet because when we get the craft back, we'll have gathered it, and that should then complete. So we're ready to launch. How do we launch? Well, one thing to do is access something called stability control. If you press the T key, watch this thing here. If you press the T key, that locks in the SAS, which is the stability enhancement system. Yeah, it's like a stabilizing system. However, you can only do it with a pilot. Now Jeb's a pilot, but if we had an engineer in here, we couldn't do this. What that does is basically tell Jeb, right Jeb, as we're taking off, I want you to try and stay in a straight line. Okay, so try and pilot the craft, because you're a pilot. Try and pilot it and keep it in a straight line as best as you can. And that's it. We don't need to worry about anything else. The throttle's here, but we don't need to worry about the throttle because when we hit the spacebar, it's going to go full throttle because it's a solid fuel booster. Yeah? We're just going to go straight up. Then the fuel's going to run out. Then we're going to sort of go up, and then we'll reach a peak, a bit like a ball. We'll start falling down. As we start to fall down, I'm going to undo that other mystery goo and see if we can nick some more science and do another crew report if we can on the way back down. We'll then deploy the parachute, land safely. We might land in the water, we might land here. In fact, what we should do is head that way because the sea is over there, you see. So as we start to take off, if you look at this nav ball, it's kind of hard to understand the nav ball at first, but basically imagine you're at the North Pole looking down. You're kind of like that. That's basically what it is. You're looking straight down the nav ball like that. This is the top half of the Earth, yeah? You're looking straight at the North Pole. That is east. Okay, that is that way. So what we want to do is we start taking off, press the D key and try and get it to Because you got WASD, so press the D key, we'll steer it that way. Press W, we'll steer it that way. Pretty much it, really. So we'll press space, take off, press the D, see if we can turn it a bit. Try and get over towards the water. Because if we can land in the water, we can actually get some more signs. But let's see what happens. Okay. We're going to launch in 3, 2, 1. There we go, press the D key. Like I say, it's completely uncontrollable, this bit. There we go. Now, can we get a crew report at that point? 3.2 data, 3.2 signs. The shores look inviting as you watch the waves roll by the coast. Fantastic. Can we get a mystery goo from here? Mystery goo. Jiggles and wobbles as a crash flies. 6.3 signs. We'll keep that data. Okay, now we're starting to fall. Look at our altitude at the top here. 3,000 meters. We are falling. We're heading towards the sea, which is exactly what we want. And I now need to press the space bar to deploy the next stage. So when I do that, the parachute will deploy. There you go. So the parachute's up. If we didn't do that, then what's going to happen? This will hit the floor, Jeb will die, and there'll be a very big explosion. He's not going to land on the sea by the look of it. When we get to about 500 meters, that parachute will fully deploy. Like that. And then we'll gently fall down to the earth. Now look at this number here. Surface, 6.9 meters per second. That is your velocity going straight towards the surface, yeah? 6.97 meters per second. That's fine. That becomes critical later. If your craft is heavier, has more mass, it will fall quicker. And you'll need more parachutes to slow it down. And if you go too quickly, things blow up. Now, what happened there was the engine blew up. So did one of the mystery goos, so we may have lost that data. But Jeb's still intact because this thing's fine. So what we'll do is we'll EVA Jeb. Alright, Jeb. And WASD to kind of walk around like that. And let's have a look. Did that have any data? Collect the data. Mystery goo containment. Removing the experiment will render this module inoperable. Restoring functionality will require a scientist. That's fine. So we'll take that data, we don't care about that. And what he could do is review stored data. If we can get him to store his data, store experiment there, then whilst he's on the surface now, he should be able to do another EVA report. Because when he was, this is weird, but when he was actually on his craft grabbing hold, he was technically flying. He wasn't actually on the ground. So now we're on the ground. EVA report. There you go. I don't think a spacesuit was entirely necessary, was it? Recovery, 2.2 signs. Free signs. Definitely worth doing. So we press F to climb. Press B to board. Oh, F to climb. Come on, Jeb. Okay, spacebar will jump him up. He's back inside. That's it. There he is. His picture will appear here. Now, what we can do now is you go up to the top. Now look at all these goals that got achieved there. Look at that. Launch the first vessel. Set an altitude record of 3,500 meters. We didn't do the distance record yet, so we've still got that one to do. We did do the speed. And yeah, 300. We didn't quite, so it's set another one now for 450 and another altitude. So we've got some more targets to hit. But if we hover up here, it says recover vessel. So that recovers the vessel with Jeb and everything inside of it. So we'll now get all of that science back, and you'll see what happens. We'll get a nice little report now. So here we go. Crew report while flying over Kerbal shores. We did that while we were sort of falling back down. 3.2 signs. EVA while flying over Kerbal shores. 5 signs. Crew report from launch pad. Mystery goo observation from launch pad. Recovery of vessel that survived a flight. EVA report from Kerbal shores. So you can see it all added up. Gave us an extra 18.9 signs earned. Plus we've got some bits and pieces from the contracts, yeah? So we've now got 28 signs, which is great. Click on parts. It says we recovered the command pod. So we got 500 funds back for that. We recovered the parachute and the propellant. What we didn't get back was the engine. The engine blew up. That was the thing that exploded. And one of the goos exploded as well. Actually, I'm surprised we didn't get back the other goo. Crew, Jeb gained 1 XP. And our rep's now gone up a little bit, as you can see. And we're done. Now, if you click over here, SSI-1 debris, we can actually recover that. Gives us a bit more money. Recover that. A little bit more money. And there you go. Ah, there it is. Now we've got the other goo back. It must have flown off. There you go. 6.3 science. We got back from that, and 700 funds. Good stuff. That has now given us 35 science, which out of our first launch is fantastic. What that basically means is we can now unlock both of these, and then some if you want to. But what we're going to do is we're going to unlock the basic rocketry. That's 5 science to unlock the engine with the liquid fuel tank, so we'll do that. That's good stuff. It's going to give us some more options now, you'll see. And then the engineering we can unlock. The engineering will give us a separator, a stack decoupler as it's called. Very useful for staging. And what's that one? That's the science. Now this is extremely valuable. You get lots of science for this, so we're going to take that. That leaves us with 25. Now each of these are 20, so we'd have to be very careful about which one we want to take next. Yeah? So I'm not going to pick that just yet, because what we need to do next is to look at our contract situation, decide what the next contracts are, and then try and tailor our science tech tree for that so that we can achieve those goals. But that's going to be in the next video. This was my video number 1 in the Kerbal Space series. I hope you enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs up if you did. And until the next video, guys, take care and happy flying.